don't know if I want to do that. All right. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I am having I don't Zoom updated and my little focus button is not available. So if you want to turn your camera off, you can do that, because otherwise you'll be on the video. I cannot start focus mode. So if you want to, or you can turn your camera to the ceiling or something like that. But if you stay on camera, you'll be on the video. All right. So other than that, everything is okay. Like I said, I don't know what they did. They upgraded Zoom and I have a different look and some of my gadgets are not available. Starting focus mode is one of them. All right. We are going to go ahead and look at 4.8 today. 4.8 is climate and geography, which is kind of ironic because we are going through some climate change like crazy. Who knows what's going on these days? I'm gonna give it another minute. We were missing a couple of people. Again, I had changed the grade book so that the 3D seasons activity is now the first grade for this last 9 weeks. We are going to pick up the pace a little bit for these next couple of sessions because we still have a lot to cover before May, because your exam is in May. So we have time, but we still have a lot of things to cover. Again, I just let you in, my focus mode is not working. So if you want to turn your camera off, you can do that, because otherwise you'll be on the video. All right, Sean, did you hear that? You can turn your camera off because my focus mode is not working. There you go. All right. Okay. All right, so like I was saying, we still have quite a few modules to do as far as work to cover. We have 4.8 and 4.9 to do on this one. So by the time we go on spring break, we will test 4.6 to 9 before you go on spring break. And when we come back, we'll pick up the pace from there. So again, the objective is to finish this unit 4 by next Wednesday and test those last few topics that we did not test before the midterm. Midterm, we did 4.1 to 5, I think. And now we're going to do 6 to 9. All right. Okay. That being said, I'm going to go ahead and let Mr. Sneeds talk. Those who are late will just have to watch it in the class list. Whoops, he's quiet.
Earth's climate. So we'll be focusing on how regional factors like wind patterns, mountain ranges, and large bodies of water can influence climate. We'll be drawing a lot from earlier topics in today's video, so you'll definitely want to make sure you've seen topic 4.5, which is global wind patterns, and topic 4.7, which is solar radiation. And you can check both of those out in the links above. Our objective today is to describe how Earth's geography affects weather and climate. And the essential knowledge we need in order to do that is that weather and climate are affected by the sun's energy, but also by geographic factors like mountains and ocean temperature. So we'll be looking specifically at an effect known as the rain shadow effect and how that impacts weather on either side of a mountain. And then our science skill for the day is to explain relationships between characteristics of environmental concepts represented visually. So first, a quick reminder that climate is largely determined by insolation, or the intensity of incoming solar radiation. As a general rule, the equator gets the most direct sunlight, so it's the warmest, which drives air to rise at the equator, which causes precipitation to be highest there as well. Then as the air sinks back down from the Hadley cell at 30 degrees north and south, that leads to the formation of very dry conditions and deserts here. We also have this general rule of thumb that as we move further away from the equator, temperature gets colder as insolation is spread out over a larger area due to Earth's curvature and as it passes through more atmosphere before reaching land. However, those are kind of broad generalizations about climate. So today we'll look much more precisely at some other factors that determine especially regional climate. So the first is the location of mountains, which can disrupt the movement of wind and produce something called the rain shadow effect. And then we also have the location and temperature of oceans, which will generally add moisture to the air of nearby land and can moderate or stabilize the temperature since water absorbs heat from the land when it's really hot and also releases heat to the land when it's really cold.
My work is easy because I use ClickUp. Here's how I keep track of all my tasks. I start by brain dumping everything I need to get done.
Now we'll talk about the effect that mountains can have on nearby weather patterns. So the rain shadow effect is something that's especially prominent when mountains are found near the coast, but it can happen with any range of mountain. So as we can see in this diagram here, the water that's blowing in off of this ocean here is especially warm, and it's especially moist because it has a lot of water vapor in it that is picked up from the ocean. That's going to lead to this windward side of the mountain, or the side that's facing the ocean, to receive a lot of rainfall. And that's because as this warm and moist air mass hits the mountain, it starts to rise. That causes the air mass to cool, which means that the water vapor in that air has to condense and fall as rain. So on the windward side of the mountain, we get very lush green vegetation. On the other side of the mountain, though, which we call the leeward side, it's very dry because the air has lost most of its moisture on the other side of the mountain. So this dry air that's descending down will form desert-like conditions on the leeward side of the mountain, which is the side that's facing away from the wind. Again, this is most prominent close to the ocean, but this can happen effectively with any range of mountains. So let's take a look at a real example of the rain shadow here. So in South America, we have the Andes Mountain, which is this long, narrow coastal mountain range here we can see shaded in on the western portion of South America. And so to understand the rain shadow effect here, we first need to remember that the prevailing winds between 30 degrees and 0 degrees, or between 30 degrees and the equator, are going to be from east to west. So I'm going to draw in our winds here. And what that means is that our eastern side of the Andes, the side facing the wind, is going to be the windward side. And so this is going to receive this very moist air that, remember, has picked up a lot of moisture from the Atlantic Ocean. And so what we're going to see is on the windward side, or the side that's facing the wind, we're going to see a lot more vegetation. So if we were to draw in what the vegetation might look like in South America, we're going to expect to see a lot more of this lush green rainforest area with high amounts of precipitation on the eastern side of the Andes, or the windward side. And then on the leeward side, or the side that faces away, we're going to expect to see a lot drier conditions. And so this helps us understand why the Atacama Desert, which is located on this western coast of South America here, is positioned where it is. This warm air mass that's moving westward across South America, it picked up a lot of moisture in the Atlantic Ocean. It's depositing all of that moisture as rainfall on the windward side of the Andes. So once it rises up and over the Andes, that air has lost most of its water vapor, and it's descending down on the leeward side, the westward side, as a really dry air mass that produces these arid desert-like conditions. Remember that being at 30 degrees latitude also means that the conditions are going to be a lot drier because of the Hadley cell. So this is where we get that air mass that's sinking back down to Earth. It's very dry, and so notice how close the Atacama Desert is to this 30 degrees south latitude.
That's insane. I can't see your screen from here anymore.
Latitude, and so that's also going to help us understand why there's such dry conditions there. Now, if we look at an aerial photo of the Atacama Desert, we can actually see how dramatic this is, when viewed from above. So we can very closely follow that ridge there that has on the eastern side of the mountains the lush green vegetation, all of the rainfall, and then the dry conditions on the leeward side, the west side. Now, if we zoom out and look at all of South America, that rain shadow effect becomes even more dramatic. So we can follow the ridge of the Andes and again, see that most of that rainfall is happening on the windward side of the mountains, and then the leeward side is far drier, and that's obvious even from satellite images. Now, when we look at an actual precipitation map of South America, this image on the left here that has all of the different annual precipitation levels shaded in different colors, we can see that rain shadow effect again is really, really pronounced. So if we look at roughly where the Andes Mountains would fall, right along this region, we can almost tell where the Andes are without even having them drawn in on the map. Because remember, with the Andes here, we're seeing all of this lush vegetation, this heavy rainfall on the eastern side of the mountains. This is the side that has, remember, that warm air mass with all the moisture coming across from the Atlantic Ocean. And then once it goes up and over the mountains, it's descending down onto the leeward side and it's very dry. So that's where we see these reds and these oranges and the really low precipitation levels. We can also see the impact that the tectonic plate boundaries have on the climate of South America. So if we look to the right diagram at this location of the subduction plate boundary along the coast of South America, that's actually what's responsible for forming the Andes. So when we think back to topic 4.1, plate tectonic activity, we remember that a more dense oceanic plate is going to be subducted or forced beneath a less dense continental plate. So when that oceanic plate subducts the continental plate, it's going to force some magma and some lithosphere upwards, which is actually what forms that narrow band of coastal mountains. In this case, it's the Andes. Suggested science skill for practice FRQ 4.8 today is to explain how environmental concepts and processes represented visually relate to broader environmental issues. So what I want you to do is see if you can describe the regional precipitation pattern you would expect to see from the portion of Mexico and Central America indicated on the map, and then to justify your answer. And for a hint, think about the prevailing wind directions and the local bodies of water nearby this area. Try to decide what that would mean for the precipitation patterns of this region. This is such a challenging practice FRQ today. I'm going to do a video explanation here. So the first thing we want to do is draw in 30 degrees latitude, which helps. Even if you don't know exactly where 30 degrees latitude falls, it's roughly right here, but you know that
Right.
as the rain shadow effect and how that impacts weather on either side of a mountain. And then our science skill for the day is to explain. So the first thing we want to do is draw in.
Okay.
What makes a post-university person? Post people don't have time to.
All right, I was trying to pause that. All right, I am going to post this FRQ, so please do pay attention to his little explanation. We are going to look at climate graphs and how to interpret them. So please do follow along with what he is showing you. I know if I paused it, I would mess it up. Because I got this little button that keeps jumping in front of my button here. Here we go.
Waste. They want to move their career forward. Post people don't have money to waste. They want a good education
They're
at a
determined
great
to get this
value.
commercial in.
Are you a post person? Find out at post.edu.
When curiosity strikes, about the everyday lives of your family.
In 30 degrees latitude, which helps. Even if you don't know exactly where 30 degrees latitude falls, it's roughly right here, but you know that the equator is going to be further off screen here. So we should know that as we're moving from south up to north in this region, we should expect to see less rainfall. So one possible answer you could have given was that the southern region of the diagram should be expected to see more rainfall because it's closer to the equator. It's going to have warmer air. And the northern portion of the region would be closer to 30 degrees, where we see a lot lower levels of precipitation. Another factor that you could have taken into account for your answer is the prevailing wind direction, which between 0 and 30 degrees is going to be east to west. So our prevailing winds would be coming in this way. And so what that means is we're going to be collecting moisture from the ocean here, the Gulf of Mexico and the Atlantic Ocean. And when that moisture, that warm air hits the landmass, it's generally going to be depositing a lot more rainfall right along the coast where it's making that kind of meeting the body of land. And so we would expect to see more rainfall along the eastern coast of this region, which is facing the windward direction. Even if we don't have a mountain range here, we still see this effect where local bodies of water are going to produce higher levels of precipitation when they make it to land. And we see this effect in Michigan too. If you look at cities like Holland or Muskegon that are right along the lakeshore, they get a lot more rain and a lot more snow than areas that are further inland, like Grand Rapids. Hey everybody, it's Mr. Smeeds, and today we'll be covering topic 4.9,
No, we won't.
which is a really interesting environmental phenomenon called the El Nino Southern
All right,
Oscillation.
that's for next time. And I do have a question that goes along with that as well. All right, so what you need to do today is look at your 4.8, and 4.8 is also available in the AP classroom. The things you need to focus on for 4.8. All right, you also need to know the difference between climate and weather. Climate is regional. See, like right here, they're explaining weather is day to day and it's short term, and climate is long term. So it's more seasonal. So we have the climate is for the winter season, a spring season, although right now we don't know whether we're spring and winter right now because temperature is going up and down. The trees don't know what to do. They started to bloom and now it's freezing. So the buds are going to get all messed up. The only good thing about that is it's washing the pollen out of the air, and the wind is blowing and knocking that pollen off, so we might not be so bad. But yeah, that assignment is set to go with 4.9, so that's why it's locked. I don't want you to start that yet. Okay, so yeah, I put it up there because it was on my mind and I wanted to make sure that I got that down. But yes, if you can see it, it's locked until Friday so that it goes with 4.9. All right, so today I want you to focus on this one, especially this, and one of my questions on that assignment is what agency is responsible for reporting these things, and it's the National Ocean and Atmospheric Association. They call it NOAA. Okay, so you need to know who NOAA is. You need to know the difference between weather and climate. And so give this a good look over. So in particular, he talked about the difference between one side of a mountain, the weather on one side of the mountain and the other side of the mountain, and they called those rain shadows. So make sure that you have an understanding of that. So read this over, look at all the pretty pictures, click on all the buttons, and then you can do the AP Classroom assignment for 4.8. So that's the assignment for today. If you have not completed the 3D season activity, please make sure that's done today because it's late after today. Okay, that is the first grade for this 9 weeks, but it was due like yesterday. I might go in and change that due date because we pushed a week back, but that was due. Okay, all right. Okay, and then like he said, you're going to need to have an understanding of plate tectonics to understand mountain chains and the activity we did on Coriolis effect. You're going to need to understand that in order to understand wind patterns and how that affects the weather and climate. So all of that is going to tie together. If you came in after the beginning, I was explaining that we are going to be finished with 4.9 is the last unit in the Unit 4. So we will test that before you go on spring break. Okay, so we're going to be tested before, for the midterm, we tested 4.1 through 5, so we'll do 6 through 9 before you go on break. Okay, all right, so that being said, go ahead and read this over and then work on 4.8 in the AP classroom. I need to record, I think 4.6 and 7. So please make sure that you've done those. I'll put those in the grade book today. And I was trying to make sure certain things went in the next 9 weeks and not be trying to cut down on zeros for some folks. And folks, this is our last 9 weeks. So let's make sure that we stay on top of all assignments. Don't let them fall behind. Use class time for class work. And because if you do that, you're going to get finished on time. And so, okay, so like I said, 6 and 7, 8 and 9 are going to be on this next test. I'm putting 6 and 7 in the grade book from the AP classroom. 8 and 9 I'll put in next week together. I will put up the question he just discussed with you, that FRQ, by Friday. So that would be the things that you work, 2 things that you'll work on Friday. Any questions, please ask. Somebody's Genie. I can't. I know some of you do like to get ahead of things, so I will open that assignment for El Nino. Okay, so I did open that El Nino versus La Nina assignment. If you are all done and you are wishing to have something to do, because that is kind of a research question. But I would read the unit 4.9 first before trying to answer that question. I did answer one part of that question for you today. All right, I am recording the scores for watershed and solar radiation. Some of you haven't done solar radiation. Some of you haven't done either one. So please make sure you, in the AP classroom, have done 4.6 and 7. Those are the scores I'm putting in now. Let's do that. And again, a reminder for the 3D seasons in 3D, that's due today. After today, it's late. Been working on that since a while ago. I should do this. Bracket 3. What am I looking at? Let's go. Now I gotta go back. All right, if you're in a good place to stop, you may do so. All right, and you may log out, and I'll see you on Friday. Some of y'all have some catching up to do. Like I said, it's not going to slow down because we have to get a lot done before May. So please try not to fall behind. Have a good afternoon. Stay warm.